Hi, I'm Charles Galda, your host for Vision New England's Church in Action program. This week, I'm talking with Dr. Colleen Kim. Colleen is an educator, leadership coach, and creator of the Refresh Network, a hub of podcasts where she explores sustainable leadership, ministry alignment, and purposeful living. She's got a doctorate in education and leadership in healthcare. She focuses on change, resilience, the realities of leading in complex environments, and that all gives her some unique insights, especially as it applies to this next generation, young people coming up. And we're going to be exploring that today. Colleen, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Charles. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I touched a little bit on your background, but could you flesh it out for us a little bit more? How did you end up in Connecticut? How did you end up in doing the work you're doing?
Oh, sure. Love to. So I was born and raised in Connecticut. I've lived up and down the eastern seaboard, all the way down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and back up again. And the call of ministry here in Connecticut has always been strong.
Mhm.
Um, so, about 40 years ago or so, I became a Christian and with my family at the time in response to a Billy Graham convention here in Hartford, Connecticut.
Hmm.
And since then, I've had tremendous ministry opportunities. One of my nurse friends tells me it's really from the womb to the tomb, from cradle to the grave. And so I've worked with all kinds of people in ministry, volunteering, and looking at their motivations and what really helps them to feel like they're giving to the kingdom work and getting back this reciprocity idea of what's in it for them. Um, when we work with all kinds of people in all kinds of ages, everybody has their own little mini motivation, I think. And, uh, and so, that's been near and dear to my heart for my entire life. I've also worked as a professor for about 15 years and leadership and professional development. So, that's in addition to being a director of children and families and working with youth and doing that for around 15 years. So, um, kind of a broad gamut and hopefully summarized in 30 seconds or less.
Well, you mentioned something that struck my interest because Vision New England was Billy Graham's partner. We invited him up here and did the Crusades with him. Does that mean you got saved at a Vision New England event?
Well, you know what? Let me think about this. I suppose that could be true, right? That was back in 1981. Um,
That's neat.
tell me this. Yeah, yeah. So that partnership, yeah, runs deep, and that was a time and era that there was a revival
Hmm.
in a major way here in Connecticut in the Northeast, unparalleled, I think, for the time. And so yeah, I think there's a nice affinity there.
Yeah, it would make sense. My understanding is that Billy Graham never just went places; he had to be invited places, and so we
Yes.
invited him. So I think, based on what I can tell, you got
Yeah.
saved at a Vision New England event, which is really cool. I didn't know that connection.
Oh, I love that. I think
And
that's
so,
great.
one of the things we want to talk about today is this whole concept of volunteers or people serving. And the
Yes.
church, right, runs on that, as you well know, and it's integral to us really doing anything, and specifically disciple making. And it's a really challenging area these days. And so, tell us a little bit about your ministry and professional experience as it relates to that, if you would.
Yes, yes. So, as we know, volunteering is the lifeblood of the church. We can't pay everybody on staff. And there's a lot of voices out there today who are talking about this, writing books. Mac Lake is one of them and leading others. And I feel like here in New England, we've always done ministry um, really well that doesn't have the big funding behind it. Having lived in Atlanta, in North Carolina, in Louisiana, in the Bible Belt, the heart of the buckle of the Bible Belt, I've been part of those experiences with again youth and younger people volunteering and in all ages, but there's been a lot of resources and um, financial wealth behind it.
Mm.
Here, we need to do things really innovatively. And I guess that works well for our frugality in New England. We're known to be, those penny pinchers. We can get a lot out of a penny, and we get creative with what we do. So when we think about how we want to fuel and power the ministry that we do, it really is creative. Some examples of that for me have been in churches where I've led large initiatives, large projects. Um, One of my favorite summertime projects was also always a Bible camp. We were about maybe second in the state for numbers of people who would be coming to the camp and volunteering to the camp. And we had like this ratio of one volunteer to 1.5 kids. And most of our volunteers were youth, college, career teachers, um, and that kind of ratio is impressive.
Mm.
I mean, who can say environments. You've got like one teacher to 4 to 5 kids. We had one volunteer to 1.5 kids. That was impressive because we built a culture around why youth, young people, college and career, felt like they wanted to volunteer, what attracted them to volunteering in the church, and what was in it for them as well. Oftentimes, at the end of the experience, it would be recommendation letters from me, it would be guidance and mentoring from me one on one. Finding out relationally like what was important in their lives. Maybe they were looking for jobs, maybe they were looking for their next step in the college experience. And because I had have that unique perspective of having experience in the college area as well as with those younger folks that I would be mentoring, it really worked well. But even for people who are listening to this message, this show, who don't have that broad womb to the tomb experience and connections, they know people who have that expertise. So you don't have to be the jack of all trades and master of none, or, you don't have to have um, all of the expertise built into your own subject matter life. You can reach out to those in your network, in your influence, who have that can speak into the lives of your volunteers. So it's really getting to know what makes them tick and how to make it a really good reciprocal experience.
Well, so help me with that a little bit. I want to tease out a little bit of nuance there.
Mm,
If part of what it sounds like is the reason we or the way to get people to volunteer is we got to figure out what's in it for them, which can
mhm.
sound pretty consumerish. And we
It
think people ought to
does.
be volunteering because they love Jesus, because they're a disciple and manage themselves and love. Help me square those two things.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And in the perfect world, what you had mentioned as the latter example is where we want to be, where people are coming to this experience of tourism because they love Jesus and they want to build up the kingdom. But in reality, when you're talking with big numbers of volunteers, not everybody has that heart set or that head space. And
Yeah.
so, I believe, yeah, yet. And
Right.
so it's all part of mentoring and seeing what your volunteers do have as their strengths. And I've always learned, just a little side note here. Al, my husband, was the first one to teach me that when somebody wants to volunteer, you never say no. There is always an opportunity for them to plug in.
Yeah.
I've had people who, because of their background history, were not suitable to work front lines with children, for example, but we could put them in other places throughout the week, helping and being, um, you know, uh, guided by others to set up rooms or to, you know, help with food prep or to help with donation pickups and things like that. There is always a yes for people who have a heart to want into the ministry. Um, and so, as you think about what motivates volunteers, I did a research. It was my capstone for my master's at the time, and I surveyed several churches here in Connecticut. And we asked the question, basically, what is your motivation for volunteering and how do you like to volunteer? And the results of my research were that people have this altruistic idea of volunteering where I volunteer because it makes me feel good.
Mm.
A lot of people had a motivation of, and this was kind of in the older volunteers, say 40s, 50s, 60s and above. I volunteer with my friends. But that's not unique to that particular age,
Mm.
because those who are younger, who are high school, college, career, like to volunteer with their friends as well. It is highly relational. So when we think about discipleship and the process of recruiting and attracting and retaining volunteers, we're really looking at relationships from you as a director, of others around them. How can we build community together that makes it super attractive for others to look at this work that we're doing and say, I want to be a part of that? That looks like you're having fun. That looks like you're doing kingdom work that makes a difference. And I want to be a part of it because it looks good. That can appeal to the baby Christian who doesn't really have maybe a fleshed out sense of why they want to serve in the church yet or where they could do it, but they know that they like what they see and they want to be a part of it. And so, to help people with their motivations, I also found out that there are traditionally long standing in church government policies and practices, committees that folks join for years. That's not attractive to our volunteers today. Most people don't want to be on a committee for 3 years, 2 years, even 1 year feels like a stretch for
Or for
people.
one meeting. Right?
Yes. I mean, seriously. I mean, honestly, we do meetings, we've gotten creative. We do meetings over Zoom and we do meetings in person. People, especially today, tend to want to put away the tech a little bit and get face to face. And so that's a good point, Charles, because out of practicality, we do things on with using our technical gifts. And that's okay. But when we do have the chance to get with a person real time, that makes a difference. You can actually touch them on the shoulder. You can walk in side by side together. You can sit at a table and see how they're doing a little bit better. And so, When people want to sign up or want to volunteer in a ministry, they really like the short stints. Short stints meaning I'm with you maybe 2 Sundays a month. You know, when I was in ministry, it used to be that I thought everybody would show up every single week to church. That's not what we're doing today. Average weekly attendance is actually bi-monthly.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
a little different for some of us who work in the church,
And,
um,
and
who have expectations that are different.
yeah, and part of what I hear you saying too is that there are going to be people who serve for quote unquote right reasons, and there are some people
Mm.
who serve for quote unquote wrong reasons. But when
Yeah,
they're serving, you're putting them with the people that are building the relationships that you can now have the opportunity to move them along to the right reason. Because serving is a spiritual practice, a spiritual discipline that God will use to change us, and putting us in proximity with those people is part of that. Am I hearing the way it works in your experience?
absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you brought that up because what I would do oftentimes is pair people who are stronger in their walk, they've been in the faith a long time, or just longer than somebody who is newer. And that is so successful. I love that model. And that helps deepen your bench as well. Today, churches have it's been like this for years. It isn't just an issue of today's church, but burning out your volunteers. And that's something very near and dear to my heart because in my doctoral work, I researched all about resilience and how not to burn out people in their ministry work, in their professions, how to carve out that time. And so when we think about the bench of volunteers that a church has, we need to use our technology in a really creative way. So many of our churches today have automated church centers that track what your gifts are, what attendance is, what your giving is, etc. In those particular modules, there are typically always an add on to be able to communicate with your church membership and send out requests like, we're having this event and we need food donations. I've had people bake for donations who are 65-year-old men who I had no idea they had an expertise in the kitchen, but they signed up and I would never tap them on the shoulder because I would never know that about them because they weren't in my normal Sunday morning sphere of interaction.
And you're hitting on another point too, because I think back in my own experience, when we're figuring out, okay, so who's going to do what job,
Yeah,
we tend to think about what's the most effective way to get the job done. And I'm not thinking about what this
right.
person's spiritual need doing this job and who do I match them up with that's actually going to advance their spiritual life, which means I now need to know my volunteers better than maybe I do.
Yes, yes, yes. And, it doesn't take a lot of effort to do this.
Yeah.
It's really connecting with them and getting that face time in front of them and asking them, if you've got two services in between services, you are being intentional. You're seeking out people, to find out, all right, tell me more about who you are, what you like to do, what makes you tick. And that's why when we're on staff together in a church, having staff meetings and talking about, oh, hey, you know what? I met this person on Sunday morning, and they really seemed to have. They were standing behind me, and they had a beautiful voice, and I think that they would serve really nicely on the worship team. And I told them so, and So now maybe they'll go through a growth track and get discipled a little bit more intentionally to be on that particular ministry and serve there. But, going back to time frames of service, we need to be very mindful in church leadership about not burning out our volunteers. And that means we've got to have a bench established. And that means we are always looking for new people to come in with our experienced folks and have them do this mini mentoring session. And isn't that really a biblical standard when we look at how Paul and Silas went out and when we look at how others went out with them and Barnabas and sometimes they departed and they went in different ministry avenues, but uh they continued to mentor others, Timothy, and no one looking down on your youth, looking at the youth, looking at the college and career. They want a place to belong and they want a place to influence. So many times when we think about mentorship, we think about people older than ourselves. People who are younger than us have mentorship capacity as well in various areas of their own strength. So, this is the body of Christ working together, bringing the strengths in a practical way. So, yeah, time frame. The sweet spot for me in my 15 years of ministry was maybe two times a month this person is going to serve, and maybe even once a month. But I know I've got that person. I know they can come in if needed and, kind of sub in because they have the capacity, because they're not burnt out. And that is intentional ministry, not saying I need to get this end goal done and these are the resources I need and I'm going to throw everybody at them. No, we need to take the step back and say, how has God gifted my congregation right now to look at who can come in and flow out? And one of the other things that we can do a little bit better is for those ministry leads is to actually give them a title of ministry lead. It doesn't cost us a thing in the church.
Well, and
It is
and
a
if you look in a
yeah,
lot of black majority churches, you'll find that, right? We don't necessarily have
yeah,
that. We talk about volunteers, and
yeah.
I'm not sure that lexicon is really helpful to us. But when I go into a black church context, they'll talk about ministers, and they have very clearly defined responsibilities, and their context seems to have gotten away from "you're doing me a favor by being here," because a lot of our volunteers
Oh,
have that
right.
mindset.
Exactly. And that really doesn't work great long term for anybody. It can become a pain point for the volunteer, and it can really be for team dynamics within the church. It can really be a sore spot.
Yeah.
And so we really don't want to be nurturing wounds, to your point. When people have a job description, doesn't take too it's not hard to develop job descriptions for your volunteers. It legitimizes and confirms for the volunteers that I am in a position of ministry leadership, and not only are people counting on me, but this is my service to the Lord. So many people do look at time, talent, and treasure, and that treasure being that service. That's kind of an older concept. You'd see it on little kids' offering envelopes that would say time, talent, and treasure. And um, looking at the strengths within our church really optimizes a human. I don't want to go too far from our Christian from our Christian roots here, but it does optimize a human centered approach, which is what are the strengths and the weaknesses of the people that I'm working with? And I think that if we can be very wise with the resources and the knowledge that we bring to our churches today, it is very translatable. And when we look at the way that Jesus did servant leadership, he called the 12 aside. And in many parts of the gospels, we read that there were 72 disciples. And that might make people feel like, wait a minute, I thought there were 12. Well, there were larger numbers, and then we have our core.
Yeah.
So I think when we look at leadership with this idea of, for me, what I was always able to do was to almost organizationally chart it a little bit. And I needed to do that. That was out of an area of need when the ministry that I led grew so big, it doubled in size that I needed to double the organizational structure just to make the thing work. So I needed to have two assistant directors. I needed to have four leads underneath them. I needed to have 60 volunteers underneath them. And so everything just doubled. And then we could, take on the capacity of the project. So a lot of these expertise areas we have built into the church. We just need to know who our people are. And then we need to invite them into the process.
Great words to end on, Colleen. Thank you so much. Thanks for your research. Thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you for your ministry in New England. Thank you. And we didn't make the connection clear, but Al Kim is your husband. And so many people listening will know Al Kim from Life Changing Radio. And so thank you both for being
Yes.
you together.
Oh, thank you so much, Charles. It's been such a pleasure sharing with you today.
Thanks again. This program is created by Vision New England, which accelerates evangelism by helping the church work in unity to make disciples, do justice, and share Jesus, so New England will be transformed by the love of Jesus. You can find additional resources and support our mission at visionnewengland.org. We're grateful to our partners at Give, Send, Go, the Christian crowdfunding community where people give, pray, and stand together through life's hardest seasons.
At Leadership Transformations, we believe that when you have the right resources to help you slow down and experience a deep and refreshing connection to God, you can become the discerning leader you know you are created to be. Friends, Steve Macchia here, and I have a free gift for your soul. It's called Pathways. Pathways is our weekly email aimed at offering you soul-nourishing content for the journey. It contains readings, prayers, spiritual practices, a link to the Discerning Leader podcast, as well as information about all of our upcoming soul care retreats, workshops, and online offerings. So head on over to leadershiptransformations.org today and sign up for this free resource. It will help you slow down and be more